I want to talk to you about the URC, if I may, Rhys, because it's a very competitive league, as we know. It's got great teams in it. However, and there's no sugarcoating it, in Wales, there is a lot of apathy and negativity towards the URC. And you could argue it's failed to capture the imagination of the Welsh rugby public. As you'll know, there's a constant debate at the moment. Well, it has been for years, isn't it? Let's be honest. But there's been a constant debate around a
25
potential,
years.
yeah, a potential Anglo Welsh league. I think you know where I'm going to go with this, Rhys. There's a constant debate around a potential Anglo Welsh league. And there are a large section of those supporters who crave those regular fixtures against Bath, Bristol, Gloucester, Harlequins, etc. And you know, Rhys, from your time at Cardiff, when you had those sellout crowds in Europe against Bath, against Harlequins, it was a fantastic occasion. A lot of people bought into it. Can I ask, how do you feel about the URC as a product? And how do you feel about an Anglo-Welsh, the potential of an Anglo-Welsh league? Do you think that's the way forward for Welsh rugby? So two questions there, really.
Okay, so URC wise, the league that we're in is the URC, and ultimately, from my perspective, the first thing to say, which is a bit of a weird thing to say, is the URC as a business has made a huge effort in recent years to make the product much better. Now, I appreciate that that the South Africans joining have had mixed reviews, whether it be positive because the standard of rugby is obviously amazing in terms of these guys who are playing for the Stormers and the Bulls, etc., been super successful in the URC, and those guys joining our league has made it more difficult for us, put it like that.
Yeah.
But clearly, alongside that, the 12-hour flights to go and play them in a domestic fixture, so to speak, is a real challenge, and not just from a boys preparing properly physically perspective, but also clearly there's a big challenge from a financial perspective as well.
Yeah.
So pros and cons to URC. The effort they've made to rebrand it, the effort they've made to make it feel like a bigger league and really sort of give it some status within World Rugby. You'll see there's some amazing stats. Recently been to a URC conference. In fact, it was last week in Italy. And the league is growing exponentially from a public perspective. You know, look at South Africa, 37% growth last year on Super Sports. So as one example, but it's growing everywhere. So from that perspective, the rugby is clearly a good product to watch, and people are enjoying watching it, specifically outside of Wales, more so than within Wales. I think the challenge we've got in Wales is, from a URC perspective, is that there's two challenges, actually. The first one is regional rugby, even though it was 23 years ago, it's still seemingly finding its feet, and there's still a lot of backlash around it even existing. Now, I think that becomes less and less as the years go on, but it's still there. And you've still got a lack of affinity and stuff around certain areas within South Wales and North Wales, but South Wales in particular, whereby people don't feel represented. So you add those people and that attitude into an environment where they don't think that the league's particularly good because you're playing teams that aren't local and there's no travelling support and there's all those things that are a challenge within the URC. I think that's why we get so much bad press around the league. Because there is a constant flow of negativity. There is a part of me, like anybody in Wales, who really enjoys those derby days. Not derby days, those English Wales, Anglo Welsh battles.
Yep.
You know, Dragons are playing against Bristol or Bath. Clearly, you're going to have a load of travelling support, and that also adds to the occasion. You know, there is a bite to it, there is a history to it, and they are ultimately only 20 minutes down the road or 45 minutes down the road. So therefore, there's going to be a natural rivalry that perhaps you won't get if you're playing against a team from Italy. Like, you know, there's no denying that. And I think that's not speaking ill of the league. That's just a matter of fact. You know,
you're right.
That will always exist. But what I try and really buy into and try and make the point about is we are in the URC. And the URC is, as it stands, a league that incorporates those countries, the high level of rugby. All of us Welsh regions find it very difficult to compete at the top end of the URC, which demonstrates the type of standards that we're talking about. It can be frustrating. It can also be challenging commercially when you're playing against a team from far away on a kickoff time that isn't perhaps as preferable as you'd like it to be. And you might struggle to get any crowd at certain fixtures, which is sad, and it makes the league perhaps less desirable then when you reflect on that from a fan perspective. But we're playing in the URC, and I feel like as it stands, we use all we can to try and maximise that to try and make it as successful as we can make it and make as much as we can of those fixtures. If we are playing Connacht, or we are playing Leinster, or we are playing Zebra, or if it's Stormers, every one of those fixtures we need to try and make as meaningful as we can from a Dragons perspective to try and maximise the commercial opportunity and the rugby opportunity. If anything changed in the future and there was an Anglo Welsh conversation or anything happened around that, then I would suggest that it would be worth having, on the basis that, as I said just now, there's clearly a sort of natural rivalry, I guess, to certain clubs. But I don't think that there's any point, personally, in every week just criticising the league that we're playing in, and in the hope that something will change. We need to get behind it as best we can and compete in it as best we can to try and create a bit more success, which ultimately will drive more interest.
So can I ask a question about that, Rhys? The Anglo Welsh League, which people have been talking about forever, but realistically, all the Welsh regions wouldn't get into the top half of that. And I've seen lots of conversations about some Welsh regions probably assuming us would play in the English Championship. There's no commercial value to that, is there, in my head? And you know more about it than me, but I'm involved in English club rugby, and as much as I like clubs like Amptill and people, there's no actual commercial value in playing Amptill or Bedford or Nottingham, is there?
No, not compared. No, there's not really. No, not as it stands. I think the big question is, the big possibility, I guess, in all of this is you've got a CVC investment across rugby in England, Wales, and URC and everywhere. So it may be at some point that they evaluate what will work best and how they can help shape the best outcome for domestic rugby. I genuinely don't know the answer to that, whether that would ever happen. But what I agree with you on is, sometimes better the devil you know, to a degree.
Absolutely.
We're in a league here where, we're playing the Welsh derbies home and away every year. We've got some really impressive rugby teams coming over and playing us, Rodney Parade. And, we need to celebrate that more. When we've got big clubs coming into Newport to play against the Dragons, my intention this year, along with the team and our intention as a club, is to try to make every fixture count, because we don't have loads of fixtures these days, so everyone that we do have there, I think there's an opportunity to celebrate every opposition that we play against in some capacity, and we need to try and do that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mentioned that Lance Bradley interview with Wales Online earlier. He said in there that the URC is a fabulous league, and he couldn't understand why supporters didn't like it, and he got absolutely hammered for it on social media. But fair play to Rhys, you can understand, can't you, why some supporters just aren't buying into the URC. You do understand it, don't you?
I do, yeah. The biggest thing is, and this is the single biggest thing, and I would say this if I was in the URC conference or not, I think it's a great league. I back it, and I think the teams who play are outstanding. The big challenge is no travelling support impacts on the atmosphere at games.
Yes, 100%.
And ultimately, from that perspective, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that purely based on geography. So that is the one big letdown in the league. Outside of that, I genuinely think the standard of rugby is superb. And there's so many good teams and good players that we should celebrate it more.
I'd rather watch us play Munster than I would, not just like English Championship clubs, some of the clubs in the English Premiership. I'd rather watch us play Munster than Newcastle or even Gloucester, who aren't much great shakes at the minute.
Yeah, there we are. So and this is kind of it as well. It's back to my original point about the sort of regional rugby challenge that's been in Wales for years and years. There's tiered arguments, isn't there? So you have somebody who comes from somewhere in Wales that doesn't feel represented by a region, so they'll get on social media and have a go at us, at the Dragons. Then you've got somebody else then who is kind of happy to be a Dragons fan to a degree, but then just can't do anything but sort of have a pop of the league every 5 minutes. And then you've got specific fixtures within the league that people see as lesser fixtures. So they'll have a right go when you're playing against those teams at home because it's such a stupid. So the tiered arguments are constant, and it's very challenging to address them. I think what we just need to do to summarize everything, it is what it is. We're in the URC. We need to get our heads down. We need to improve our performance and get stuck in. And, that's definitely the focus for us over the next couple of years.
Yeah, the URC is our league, and we just need to make the most of it, don't we? And it is difficult. It's a very competitive league with very tough teams, but it is what it is. Like you said, Rhys, and I suppose we got to be a lot more positive around it, haven't we? So
Yeah.